Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Daily Brief. If you went to bed last night thinking the macro world was calm, you may want to return that pillow, because in the last 24 hours, the Federal Reserve officially declared quantitative tightening is over. U.S. banks quietly inhaled $13.5 billion in overnight liquidity. A billionaire told an entire audience to mortgage their house and buy Bitcoin. Bank of America opened the door for wealthy clients to allocate up to 4% into crypto. And JP Morgan was accused of a multi-month market manipulation play against Strategy Inc. Meanwhile, Bitcoin is pushing upward, and the Fear and Greed Index is still stuck in literal fear. Fear during a green market. Only in crypto. I'm SENB. This is the SENB Daily Brief for December 2nd, 2025, and today's show is dense. So buckle in. We've got charts, liquidity signals, institutional chess games, and a whole lot of headlines. Let's get into it.
You're listening to the SENB Daily Brief, powered by Whole Shot Coffee.
All right, let's go over the market recap. And today's market is one of those rare days where the charts and the sentiment meter appear to live in two completely different universes. Total crypto market cap is sitting around $3.11 trillion, up more than 6% on the day. And yet the Fear and Greed Index is flashing a solid 22 to 28. Fear. That's right, fear in an uptrend. Beautiful. This is classic wall of worry behavior. Price climbs, but retail still doesn't believe it. Bitcoin is trading in the 92,200 to 92,300 range, up roughly 1% on the day. TradingView charts show a strong bounce from local lows, with the daily stochastic RSI curling up. That's a signal traders love. Upward momentum building from oversold. Volume isn't explosive yet, but it is rising, especially after yesterday's macro announcements. Ethereum sitting near $3,020, up about 0.7%, attempting its own reversal pattern. Daily stochastic RSI has already turned up, signaling recovery momentum. Ethereum still looks structurally weaker than Bitcoin at the moment, but the bounce is becoming more convincing. Now, Solana is the interesting one today, currently at $139 to $140, up nearly 10% in the last 24 hours. The chart shows SOL breaking upward out of a descending channel and pushing toward the 50-day moving average. That's a technical breakout, not noise. XRP at around $2.16, up modestly. This one's just doing XRP things, slow, steady, and waiting for liquidity to find it. Despite all this green, the Fear and Greed Index is stuck at 22 to 28, both sources showing fear. It's almost poetic. Retail still doesn't trust the rally, while institutions are quietly increasing exposure behind the scenes. So, to summarize, prices up, liquidity up, momentum up, sentiment down. This is literally the definition of a pre-expansion phase. All right, with markets set, let's dive into the macro storm that rolled in last night. The Fed ends quantitative tightening. Coming up next.
You're listening to the SENB Daily Brief, powered by Whole Shot Coffee.
All right, we're back for the big headlines of the day. And folks, today is one of those days where everything in macro and crypto decided to show up at once. The Federal Reserve ends quantitative tightening. The Fed officially confirmed QT is over. No more balance sheet reduction. No more liquidity drain. They didn't announce a pivot, but they announced the thing that happens right before a pivot. U.S. banks quietly received $13.5 billion in repo liquidity. This one slipped under the radar. The banking system tapped the Fed for $13.5 billion in overnight liquidity, the second largest since the last bull cycle. Totally normal. Nothing to see here. Okay, Ricardo Salinas says, mortgage your house and buy Bitcoin. Yes, that was a real quote. Billionaire Ricardo Salinas stood on a stage and told an audience to mortgage their homes to buy Bitcoin. We do not recommend this, but it does perfectly capture the energy of this cycle. Now, Bank of America opens the door to crypto allocation. Bank of America told its wealthy clients they can now allocate up to 4% of their portfolios into crypto. This is one of the most conservative, compliance-heavy institutions in America, and they're calling crypto fair game. Wow. Vanguard lists Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and XRP ETFs. The company, famous for refusing to allow Bitcoin in retail accounts, has now quietly listed BTC, ETH, SOL, and XRP ETFs. Nothing like a bull market to change a moral stance. Raoul says Bitcoin peak expected Q2 2026. Macro analyst Raoul reaffirmed his view that this cycle peaks around Q2 of 2026, driven by liquidity conditions, adoption curves, and reflexive behavior. And the big one, JP Morgan accused of coordinated pressure campaign against Strategy Inc. A viral thread last night laid out a detailed list of claims that JP Morgan sold millions of MSTR shares, raised margin requirements to 95%, pushed an MSCI exclusion narrative, opened short positions, promoted a competing IBIT note, and contributed to a major spike in failures to deliver, all while MSTR fell from the 400s to nearly $150. We'll break this down in later because that one deserves its own spotlight. So, QT ends, banks get billions, institutions greenlight crypto, a billionaire goes full Bitcoin evangelist, Vanguard caves, Raoul updates the macro timeline, and JP Morgan is facing a spotlight it probably didn't ask for. Just another calm Tuesday in this industry. All right, let's zoom in. Next up is our deep dive story of the day, the Strategy Inc. manipulation accusations explained. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the SENB Daily Brief, powered by Whole Shot Coffee.
All right, we're back. And today's focus story is a big one. The alleged coordinated pressure campaign against MicroStrategy, now Strategy Inc. Last night, a now viral breakdown circulated on X, outlining 7 major actions attributed to JP Morgan during MicroStrategy's massive drawdown from the mid-400s to nearly $150. First allegation, JP Morgan offloaded millions of MSTR shares throughout the downturn. Now, selling isn't illegal, but size, timing, and intent matter. And according to the thread, the selling pressure was sustained and strategic. Second, JP Morgan reportedly raised margin requirements on MSTR trading to 95%. 95%. That is essentially saying, we'd prefer you didn't trade this. Such a high requirement forces deleveraging and reduces liquidity, both of which can accelerate a price decline. Next, the claim is that JP Morgan analysts amplified the idea that MSTR may be excluded from MSCI indices because of its Bitcoin exposure. The optics alone can pressure institutional holders who follow index guidelines. The breakdown alleges that JP Morgan simultaneously opened short positions on MSTR. Again, not illegal, but combined with the other actions, the timing raises questions. While MicroStrategy struggled, JP Morgan was reportedly promoting a competing Bitcoin-related product, the IBIT structured note. Ah yes, the classic, don't buy their Bitcoin exposure, buy ours. One of the more tangible data points, failures to deliver in MSTR spiked significantly, meaning shares were sold but not delivered in time, typically a sign of short-selling stress. MicroStrategy's drop wasn't just a correction, it was a collapse, and this series of actions, if connected, paints the picture of a coordinated downward push. Now, none of these actions individually prove wrongdoing, but when 7 puzzle pieces all fit the same shape, it wouldn't be the first time a large bank was caught leaning heavily on a volatile asset during a sensitive price window. The big takeaway? Whenever you have a publicly traded proxy for Bitcoin, you're going to have institutions playing every angle: long, short, market structure, derivatives, and narratives. This story is still developing, but it's a reminder, market moves are rarely just charts. There are powerful players with powerful tools behind the scenes. All right, it's time for proof of thought, viewer questions, and the question of the day. We'll read them all coming up next.
You're listening to the SENB Daily Brief, powered by Whole Shot Coffee.
All right, it's proof of thought time. This is where we pull in your questions, your comments, and of course, your spicy takes from X, Telegram, and the SENB community. Remember, if you want your comment featured on the show, drop it under the daily post, tag @SENBHeroMedia. And if you really want to get my attention, add a tiny bit of proof of thought with a small SENB tip on our website. Signal plus skin in the game always floats to the top. First one comes from CryptoJunkie_21, who says, Sen, Fed ends QT, banks get $13.5 billion, Bitcoin is up, altcoins are waking up. Are we at the start of the blow off top? Short answer? No, not yet. A blow off top is usually pure euphoria. Everyone bullish, everyone all in, no one hedging. Right now we've got rising prices, but sentiment is still in fear, and a lot of people are fading the move. That's not what the end looks like. That's what the middle looks like. Next one from Having Soon 88. Is it smarter to buy Strategy Inc., formerly MicroStrategy, instead of Bitcoin, since it's basically a leveraged BTC play? Here's the thing. Strategy Inc. is not a perfect substitute for Bitcoin. It's a listed equity with corporate risk, equity market risk, and, as we just covered, it's clearly a playground for institutional games. Bitcoin is the asset. Strategy Inc. is a vehicle on top of the asset. So if you buy Strategy Inc., understand you're not just betting on Bitcoin, you're betting on Saylor, corporate structure, and how much fun the big banks feel like having this quarter. Third one from Stacker Mom 3, and I like this one. Sen, all these headlines are great for traders, but does any of this actually help regular people trying to survive inflation? This is the real question, isn't it? Yes, when liquidity comes back, risk assets usually go up. Yes, institutions finally blessing Bitcoin and crypto is a big structural shift. But for normal people, the real benefit is optionality. You now have more ways to escape a system that keeps inflating your currency and devaluing your time. You can hold Bitcoin directly. You can use ETFs. You can earn, build, or create inside this new Rail system. None of this fixes the world overnight, but it does give you more tools than you had 10 years ago, and that matters. All right, let's wrap this up with our question of the day. With the Fed ending QT, banks taking fresh liquidity, and big institutions finally greenlighting crypto exposure, how are you positioned for the next 12 to 18 months? Are you A, mostly in cash, still waiting for a bigger dip? B, dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin and majors? C, already rotating harder into altcoins? Or D, ignoring price and just building, stacking regardless? Drop your answer in the comments, tag at SENB Hero Media, and if you want to push your take to the front of the line for tomorrow's show, attach a tiny bit of proof of thought with a small SENB tip. Votes, views, and value, all in one signal. All right, that does it for our mailbag. Up next, our SENB project update and token progress report.
You're listening to the SENB Daily Brief, powered by Whole Shot Coffee.
All right, we're back. Time for the SENB project update, our daily check-in on the token, the roadmap, and the community that's powering this entire network. SENB is currently up more than 11% on the day, with liquidity sitting just over $6,300 and market cap around $9,000. Volume is ticking up, holders are increasing, and the chart is showing a steady, clean trajectory, exactly what you want for an early-stage community token. We're seeing more creators stepping in, music contributors, meme makers, editors, animators, and people submitting proof of thought comments across X and Telegram. It's a small ecosystem, but it's an active ecosystem, and that's what matters. Phase 1 is in the books: token creation, distribution structure, and the pipeline for community tipping. Phase 2 is the expansion phase, integrating SENB into the Creator Hub, rewarding engagement, and rolling out new content formats like the SENB radio show and our long-form specials. Every episode, every comment, every proof of thought tip pushes this thing further. The SENB community continues to be one of the most organically aligned groups out there, a mix of Tooker fans, crypto veterans, newcomers, creators, and people who just want honest commentary without the corporate filter. You're building this with us, block by block, episode by episode. So for today, SENB is up, momentum is up, and the project keeps expanding. We are still small, still early, and still moving with purpose. Thank you to everyone adding proof of thought tips. It's the cleanest signal we have for what this community values. All right, that wraps the project update. Coming up next, my closing thoughts. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the SENB Daily Brief, powered by Whole Shot Coffee.
All right, time for closing thoughts. Today's show was one of those days where all the signals lined up. The Fed ends QT, banks get liquidity, institutions open the crypto door, headlines turn bullish, and yet sentiment is still sitting in fear. If you ever wanted a picture of what a stealth accumulation phase looks like, this is it. Liquidity is shifting, not dramatically yet, but decisively, and markets always move before narratives catch up. Bitcoin's steady, Solana's waking up, majors are curling, altcoins are starting to breathe, and all of it is happening while retail still doubts the rally. Perfect conditions for upside volatility later. And for the SENB community, every comment, every tag, every proof of thought tip helps us build this thing together. This show is independent, community-driven, and powered by all of you. Tomorrow, we'll be watching how markets digest the QT ending news, whether banks tap liquidity again, and whether Strategy Inc., formerly MicroStrategy, continues to sit in the spotlight after last night's viral breakdown. Plus, whatever chaos the internet decides to deliver between now and sunrise. I'm SENB Hero. This has been the Daily Brief for Tuesday, December 2nd. Stay sharp, stay caffeinated, and as always, think for yourself. The SENB Daily Brief is a production of SENB Hero Media in collaboration with Whole Shot Coffee, coffee that fuels champions. Written and hosted by yours truly, SENB Hero. Production editing and scheduling handled by Maya Valencia, who somehow keeps me on time, caffeinated, and occasionally polite. Original theme music composed and produced by Paul Hahn, the community legend whose beats hit harder than a Fed rate hike. Research support provided by the SENB community. Proof that sarcasm and spreadsheets can coexist. For more shows, merch, and on-chain chaos, visit senbheromedia.com. Thanks for tuning in. Stay caffeinated. And remember, if it's not in the brief, it probably wasn't bullish anyway.
Set my wallet free.